everybody. My name is Adrienne Desutter, although you may know me as Sow Hope Grow Hope if you follow me on Twitter. I do a lot of chatting on there about farm stress, and we just try to keep things real and candid and pretty blunt. So speaking of blunt, in the world of agriculture, we know that this past year was not what we expected it to be. In fact, the last few years have been a little bit stressful. And I think the rest of the world kind of saw some of our stressors this last year when we got locked down and spent a lot of time isolated, spent a lot of time working really closely with family, which has its pros and cons, right? So a word that we've been throwing around a lot in agriculture right now is this word resilience, okay? Raise your hand if you have ever heard of the word resilience before. Okay. I mean, obviously I can't see you, so I have no idea if you actually participated in that, but if you did, thanks. Appreciate it. If not, no penalties, right? What words come to mind when you think of the word resilience? How would you describe resilience? Right? So sometimes we might think of the word being tough or being really strong or pulling your bootstraps up, right? Just pushing through no matter what. And resilience is actually a little bit more than that. It actually goes a little bit deeper and allows us to face our challenges a little bit different. And life is full of challenges, right? There's no bull about it. Speaking of bulls, so I did not grow up on a farm. I was raised in the middle of nowhere, and we sometimes had like a bottle-fed calf just for grins. And I didn't really have a lot of experience with livestock other than that. So a few years ago, my husband called me up one day and he said, "Hey, do you want to be a cattle farmer?" And I was like, I mean, are the corn and soybeans not enough? Like, we need to do this? And he said, "Why not? I already bought them. They're coming home today." So then we became cattle farmers. And that was kind of a new world for me. But the real excitement came when we got our first bull. And lucky for me, I guess, this bull was super tame. But he was kind of a stinker, and he would always get out of our fence, like all the time. And so the first couple times it wasn't a big deal. My husband Drew was around, and he figured out a way to get the bull back in. But I never really paid much attention to it because I had 2 babies at the time that I was taking care of inside. And so one day it was the middle of harvest, and the bull got out, again. And I called my husband and I said, "Hey, what are we supposed to do about this?" And he said, "Well, I'm in the middle of a cornfield, so you're going to have to figure it out." Okay, well, that's what happens when you marry a farmer, right? You join a farm family and you just figure things out together, right? And so I strapped my kids in their seats inside, and I walked outside, and just picture this for a minute, because you can't tell here, but I'm like 5'2". I'm not the tallest gal in the world. And, I didn't really know anything about cattle. So I chased the bull around a little bit, and I kind of yelled at it and hollered at it, because that's like how I get my dog to come inside. And when I saw like some trucks and cars driving by kind of chuckling, I figured maybe that wasn't the right way to do it. So my husband gave me the good tip of carrying a bucket of corn around and everything. And so I picked it up, and I'm not very strong right now either. And so I'm like heaving this bucket of corn over to this bull and trying to shake it so that maybe he'll follow me into the fence. So you can just imagine like a 5'2" chick wearing her pajamas, carrying a giant bucket of corn, hollering at a bull. Yeah, that's kind of how life went for a little while, because not only did that bull get out the one time, 7 times I had to go figure out how to get the bull back in the fence, right? So if it had happened once, like, again, I'm all about, working together as a family. But the second time I got a little more bitter. And then the third time and the fourth time, and then I just really started to get angry about the whole dang situation because it wasn't my job. And it wasn't fair. And it wasn't something that I asked for. I didn't ask for cows. I didn't ask to be a bull wrangler. But there it was, and I had to do it. And so for a while, I got really, really bitter. Now, when we're facing challenges in life, we have this choice that we get to be bitter or we get to be better, right? Most motivational speakers or even teachers or parents or friends will always tell you to be better, right? Think positively. Just look at the bright side. Things could be worse. It's going to get better. And I honestly just kind of think that's a bunch of bull. No pun intended. You can't even laugh at your own jokes because like no one's around you to laugh. You just have to go with it. So anyway, I really do believe that optimism is a good thing, right? And looking at the bright side, that is a good thing, definitely. But I'm going to give you a piece of advice that you might not have heard from others, and that is to allow yourself to be bitter. When you're facing challenges and you're being someone who is resilient, resiliency begins with having challenges. It begins with dealing with adversities, right? And it begins with coping through them. We're not just going to ignore them. Challenges in our life are things that are there that we have to deal with, because if we don't deal with them, we just kind of bottle them up and then we explode. Okay, so let's take this whole COVID thing, right? I'm sure you guys are kind of sick of hearing about it and sick of talking about it, but many of you last year and this year have been really robbed and going through some of those same feelings I was going through, where you feel like things are kind of unfair. You didn't ask for any of this. You had completely different ideas about what you were going to be doing with your time. And here we are. So let's think about it. Homecoming, right? I'm going to guess that most of your homecomings were not the way that you expected them to be. Let's think about your sporting events. I hear that sports are back on for a while, so yay for that, I guess. But again, not the same season you wanted to see. Same with conferences or national convention. A lot of things that you were supposed to be able to experience this year, you're not getting to in the way that you thought you would. Let's just think about like your relationships, right? Hanging out with your girlfriends or your guy friends, your significant others. In the last year, things have been a lot different that way. What about family? I can tell you in our family, this pandemic and the way that we all kind of view things a little bit differently has caused a lot of arguments, honestly, a lot of disagreements about mask wearing and about who's allowed to do what or who's allowed to see who. So sometimes there's been some conflict in our families. I don't recommend blowing up a balloon with lip gloss, just fair warning. Finally, somebody, even in COVID, we're worried, right? At one time anyway, we were worried, and some of you may still feel some of that worry about getting yourself sick or getting someone else sick, right? And finally, just normalcy, right? In school, just being able to go up and give a teacher a hug, or a friend a hug, or, just having those close contacts with people. Just some of the stuff that you are used to seeing and having those routines just kind of got thrown all over the place this year, right? So when we got a lot of stuff going on and we don't do anything with it, it bottles up, and you know what happens? Oh, you guys missed a really good air show here. We lose control, okay? When we don't deal with the challenges and we don't cope with the challenges in the right way, when we don't allow ourselves to be bitter and to have feelings and to have negative thoughts, we just kind of bottle them up and we don't always deal with them in the right way. So we want you to stay in control. And so to be resilient, to get through tough times, we stay in control by doing 2 steps. And one of those is allowing yourself to have feelings, right? Give yourself permission to feel. Feel all the feels, right? Hashtag, okay? That's step number one. What does that look like? Okay, for me, sometimes that means crying. Sometimes that means yelling. Sometimes that means sitting in a room silently, okay? And whatever I need to do in a moment where I'm feeling overwhelmed, having those feelings and just allowing myself to know that's okay is a wonderful first step. Maybe for you, you lose patience. Maybe for you, you get irritated or you get angry or you get really bummed out. Maybe you're someone who needs to spend time alone to cope with things. Maybe you're someone who really seeks the comfort of your family and friends. So those are all things you can kind of be doing to just allow yourself to have those feelings, okay? Be bitter. It's fine. But I want to caution you that when you spend too much time just being bitter, when you spend too much time focusing on that negative and on the stuff that's going wrong, it doesn't come without consequences. So back to my bull story, I got really angry that I kept having to go out and get the bull back into the fence. I don't like the cold. I don't like, strapping the kids inside and having to figure out how to get this giant animal inside of a fence. It's just not my style, okay? And so I lost patience really quickly with my kids, especially with my husband. Anytime anything would happen, it would take me a couple days to just get over it. And then it was like little things that shouldn't be a big deal became a big deal. So like I locked my keys in my car one time, and I just freaked out about it. Like normally I wouldn't even care about something like that, but I just was bottling things up and really focusing all my energy and all my time on just being bitter, just being negative about the whole thing. I wouldn't let it go. I even dropped my makeup compact one time. And so I had a little eyeshadow in there that like shattered, and I don't know if that's ever happened to you guys, but it was really sad for me. Okay, things could be worse. I know. Thank you, Karen. Anyway, little things that shouldn't be a big deal become a big deal when we focus on that negativity all the time, okay? So we're going to allow ourselves to be bitter, but we have to be a little bit careful. So these are my kids' little blocks things, and I've got a rubber band around them because I want to show you what happens when we stay bitter, right? So the rubber band is us, and these little blocks are going to be all the ways that we choose to stay bitter. So it stretches you really thin, right? I'm trying to get these in here. That alone time that you took to just cope, if you do that too much, it kind of turns into isolation where you can't get yourself out of bed, right? That resting, that allowing yourself to just have time to relax can turn into not being able to get out of bed. You can put yourself even into a bit of a depression or anxiety and create some real mental health problems if you're focusing too hard on all that bitterness and not letting go of some things. The yelling happens or crying happens, but when we do it too much and we focus on it too much and we don't find ways then to get out of that funk, what happens is we stuff all that bitterness in there and then we break, right? So our step number 2 in dealing with challenges, allow yourself to be bitter and then be better, okay? Instead of breaking, bounce back, okay? Bounce back. That is what resiliency is all about, you guys. It's about having a challenge, knowing that you have adversity, accepting that, facing failures, being okay with failures, being okay with feeling bad moments, having the feelings, and then bouncing back and getting yourself back on track, right? How do we even do that, okay? How do we bounce back, right? When we're ready, there's a few different ways to do it. There's lots of ways, but I'm going to share with you a few of my favorites. The first one is just having some forgiveness for yourself, allowing yourself some grace. So I want you to repeat after me, okay? Just say, I'm allowed to have a bad moment. Okay, and if you're in class, you probably didn't repeat after me, and that's fine. But just know that you're allowed to have a bad moment. You're allowed to break down. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to have feelings. And if you accept that and acknowledge that that's okay, then you don't waste all your time beating yourself up. Okay? You don't beat yourself up when you have a mistake, or when you have an outburst, or when you feel overly sad about something. You just say, okay, that's part of life, that's part of coping, and now I'm going to move on from that. Okay? I give myself permission to move on from that. Okay? A second way to bounce back when you're trying to be a resilient person is just having perspective. So I'm going to read a little poem to you, okay? And this was, you probably have heard it before, or maybe you have heard it before. It was written by a girl who's actually a 17-year-old. She was going to be a senior at the time when she wrote this. And when you read it from top to bottom, this is what it says. Today was the absolute worst day ever. And don't try to convince me that there's something good in every day. Because when you take a closer look, this world is a pretty evil place. Even if some goodness does shine through once in a while, satisfaction and happiness don't last. And it's not true that it's all in the mind and heart, because true happiness can be attained only if one's surroundings are good. It's not true that good exists. I'm sure you can agree that the reality creates my attitude, and it's all beyond my control. You'll never in a million years hear me say today was a very good day. But when you read this same exact poem from the bottom to the top, you see things a little bit differently. Okay? Same exact words, but we're going to read them the bottom to the top now. Today was a very good day. And you'll never in a million years hear me say it's all beyond my control. My attitude creates the reality. I'm sure you can agree that it's not true that good exists only if one's surroundings are good. True happiness can be attained because it's all in the mind and heart. And it's not true that satisfaction and happiness don't last. Some goodness does shine through once in a while, even if this world is a pretty evil place. Because when you take a closer look, there's something good in every day. And don't try to convince me that today was the absolute worst day ever. So even by looking at the exact same words, the same content, just looking at it a different way, we have a whole different attitude, a whole different perspective, right? And I don't want to confuse you, because as I said before, I'm not telling you that you always need to look on the bright side of things. I'm not going to give you that advice. What I'm saying is, know that a good side does exist, okay? And that when you're done looking at something through a negative lens, when you're ready to bounce back, there is a positive way that you can look at your challenges as well. There's some good that you can see. So my husband and I didn't give up the old cattle farming like I kind of hoped we would at the time. And more recently, we brought our we had put the cattle over to our home farm, which kind of helped us solve that problem with the bull getting out. It was a different fence, different area. There was more people on the farm to help with it. But then this past winter, I guess it would have been, or spring, or fall, excuse me, he decided to bring some of the cattle back this way. And I thought, okay, it's fine. We don't have a bull anymore. You know, he spent all this time building a fence that was sure to keep these cows in, right? And the first day that they were here, they escaped. I guess that's what cattle do. I don't know, but I'm not into it, okay? So he was feeling super defeated. He fixed something in the fence, and the next day the same thing happened. And so he fixed something else, and they just kept getting out. And it turned out that like once a week, probably for like 4 or 5 weeks, these cows were getting out. And he, like I said, he was feeling really defeated, and we were really frustrated. And again, we decided, let's look at things a little bit differently here, okay? One day a week, those cattle were getting out and it was causing us stress. But 6 days out of the week, they were doing just fine, right? And we were choosing to focus on that one day that was throwing us so much grief instead of celebrating all of the days that things were going right. Now, obviously, we had to fix the fence again, and we did get the situation under control eventually. But what allowed us not to beat each other up mentally throughout that whole entire process was just being able to focus on what was good about the situation. Instead of me always calling him and saying, hey, they're out again, right? I started sending him text messages like, the cows are in today, woohoo! And that just gave us something to smile about and be goofy about, and just something that was just kind of positive. So perspective, same situation, looking at things a little bit differently can really be helpful when you're ready to bounce back. You can do that, by the way. Perspective is something that you have a choice over. And one really easy way to do it is just when you're going to bed at night, think about 3 things that happened okay in your day. It doesn't even have to be great, but what are some things that didn't go wrong in your day? And just taking an active and intentional time to do that makes it really, really easy to kind of build a better attitude about life in general. Challenge yourself to think about things differently. Finally, give yourself some fun in your life. Give yourself something to be happy about. And if you can't have fun, get yourself distracted. When you're ready to bounce back, when you're ready to stop thinking about the icky things that are happening, bounce back with humor and with fun. Maybe that means getting a hobby. Maybe it means trying something new. Maybe it means calling up a friend. One of my favorite ways to distract myself when I am having an issue with something is just to watch TV. I just watch like really silly TV. And that's all it takes to just give my mind a half-hour break, basically. And then I can kind of approach the situation with fresh eyes. One kind of fun way to have a different perspective and give yourself some good advice is to talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. Okay, so like if my best friend called me up and said like, hey, I have had a really crappy day. I am just feeling really down. I've kind of like let myself feel down, but I'm just ready to not be so upset all the time. What would I say? You know, what would you say to yourself in whatever situation you're going through if you were giving advice to your best friend? So I'd probably pick up the phone and I'd be like, girl, first of all, let's get you some chocolate, okay? Because like we know chocolate makes everything better, at least in my world. So let's start with that. And then we're going to hop on the Peloton, or we're going to turn on some type of workout video, get your energy pumping, let's get moving, right? And we're going to show the world who's boss. Okay, let's get on it. Okay, and so I really do talk to myself like that, but you don't have to. Like you do you, for sure. But just those conversations that advice that you would give someone else, give yourself the same respect. Give that advice right back to yourself. And see where it takes you. Okay. So there you have it. Hashtag bounced back, right? I'm going to wrap it up now by just saying, no matter what life throws at you, no matter what challenges that come your way, they can be big challenges, they can be small challenges, right? You're allowed to be bitter and then be better, right? Feel the feels. And then when you're ready, you grab that bull by the horns and you bounce back. Good luck, y'all.